So we're really excited for the next panel that we have coming up, and I hope you are as well. My name is Chris Hatch, and I work in capital formation with Launch Tennessee, and we're excited to have each and every single one of you here as well from across the country and across the globe. I'm also excited to introduce the moderator for our next panel, Rashaun Williams. Rashaun Williams is already a very accomplished investor, founder, and advisor. He got his start investing in stocks while still an undergrad at Morehouse College. Shout out to the HBCU hustle, right? So fast forward, and Rashaun has led investment projects at major banks, including Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and Deutsche Bank. Rashaun has become a trusted advisor to many professional athletes, performers, and celebrities, and he made national headlines when he partnered with the hip-hop artist Nas. Everybody in here know Nas? Yeah, okay. They founded Queensbridge Venture Partners, a fund that now has over 100 investments and exits in successful companies such as Dropbox. We know Dropbox, right? PillPack and Robinhood. He is now a general partner at MVP Allstar Fund, where he has leveraged his relationships with the sports world to turn pro athletes and celebrities into LPs and investors in tech companies. They just closed their third fund, check this, at $100 million. The new fund has 37 athletes as LPs and investors, and their newest investments include Lyft, Airbnb, Pinterest, and Rent the Runway. Who's staying in Airbnb in Nashville? Woo! So although he's based in California, Rashaun is no stranger to Nashville. He currently serves as the youngest member on the board of trustees at my alma mater, Fisk University, right here in Nashville, Tennessee. So we are excited to have Rashaun Williams. So without further ado and delay, please welcome Mr. Rashaun Williams.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you guys for coming. By show of hands, how many people are sports fans?
Woo! Yeah.
Excellent. By show of hands, how many people like money? Well, this is the right place for you guys, because we're going to talk about how sports teams have a major impact on cities economically, socially, from a team spirit and gathering the youth together, from development, and for those of you who are blessed enough to be introduced to this new concept that I just learned last year when I visited Nashville, you actually get the opportunity to honky-tonk in this town, apparently. So congratulations, you're in the right place. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes discussing why this is important right now in this country and why this is important in this town in particular. And then I want to introduce the panel. We have some of the heavyweights, the heavy hitters of the city, of the country, of the region, and of the state. So in general, we always hear about our local teams and how divisive things have become lately in this country. I think the one thing that we can all agree on that's been uniting us is rallying around our teams and rallying around our winners and competing as a group against other cities and other states and other leagues. So I think this is a great panel for the right time. We're going to talk about the economic impact of sports teams in this town. I think this is a very different place today than it was 25 years ago. I think most people would agree. And we have an amazing panel. So without further ado, I'll do the intros. The first introduction is for, I would argue, the busiest lady in all of Nashville, Mary Cavarra. She's the EVP and CFO of Ingram Industries, and she represents Nashville Soccer Holdings, the winner of the winning bidder for the MLS team here. So that's a pretty exciting thing. Everyone, please welcome Mary. I want to skip over to a gentleman that made the trek all the way from Memphis, EVP Business Operations for the Grizzlies, Mr. John Walker. Welcome him. And then one of my favorite guys, he doesn't even know it yet, but he is the SVP and the CRO of the Tennessee Titans, Mr. Stuart Spears. Welcome, Stuart. And then, of course, the president and CEO of the Predators, Sean Henry. Everyone welcome Sean Henry, please. So, with that being said, let's jump into the panel. I've had the honor of speaking to all of these wonderful people separately, and we had some pretty entertaining conversations and very insightful about the different things that their organizations are doing and the impact that they've been having in this city and in Memphis and in the state of Tennessee. In fact, even the region. And I want to broaden everyone's perspective because the impact that these teams are having are not just for the cities of Nashville and Memphis. It's really for the state and for the region. And I want all of our panelists to feel free to elaborate on that impact. And I'm sure they would even argue that it's a global impact, and we'll hear some of those stories. So I want to kick it off with Mary. Mary, can you discuss how Nashville wins with this new soccer team? And a couple things that come to mind from our conversations were about affordable housing, local hiring, and of course, no pressure, but a future MLS Cup. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, no pressure at all, especially for the non-sports person here for a full-time job. But when this opportunity came to us, and as it further developed last year in 2017, and then December 20th, a date we'll never forget, that the MLS commissioner came down here and announced Nashville as the 24th expansion team for MLS, it was just electrifying. And so it's more really than about sports. And as we went through the process last year, there's certainly an economic impact related to building a stadium, bringing in a team, creating jobs. But as we've continued this journey this year, I think one of the things that we've really come to realize and we've really tried to step up is we are at a different point in time. And there's times where I wish maybe this was 20 years ago, but that's not the case. And so we know there's needs in Nashville that not everybody has been able to enjoy the same prosperity. And so, and even last fall, that with our partners, we said, with this 10-acre mixed-use development, it kind of serves for two purposes. It's a way to provide amenities around a stadium that creates a great fan experience, but it's also a way to generate revenue because we just had a different financial deal than everybody else. But we also said there was going to be some component of affordable housing. Well, just earlier this week, we had finalized what that is, and it's basically a commitment to 20% of affordable and workforce housing that really has never been done in this city. And so we're stepping forward with that. We've been working with folks in terms of trying to define what it means for jobs and workforce development, and to try to think about that in innovative ways. And then kind of the third aspect of that is, I guess what I'd call community services, of trying to sort through how on this mixed-use development we can incorporate some version of childcare and make it be successful and leverage work that many others are doing, as well as trying to provide another thing that was important is a space for entrepreneurs and artisans in just kind of some incubator space. And so it extends beyond soccer, and then, I can't even begin to touch upon what we can do with youth and schools and the great examples that both the Titans and Preds have established for our city. So it goes way beyond that.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I know when I talk to a lot of people here in Nashville, they rarely put the two words affordable and housing in the same sentence. So it's good to see that you guys are starting out that way with affordable housing. I did want to go to one thing for John and the Grizzlies. I'd like to hear Mary's perspective, because they're going into this new opportunity with the economic development aspect of it in mind. John, if you don't mind, can you talk about the kind of the history behind the Grizzlies, behind Jason Wexler's ties to the city, how you guys have reshaped Memphis, and even talk about kind of your kind of regional footprint with your broadcasting. I think that's important to understand, because we're hearing Mary's story about how it's starting out, but talk about what's happened over the last decade and a half of what you guys have been doing.
Sure, thank you.
Can you hear it?
Thank you. So the Grizzlies moved from Vancouver to Memphis in 2001, and FedEx Forum was built in 2004. So we have almost 20 years in the market. The building's almost 15 years old. And what's happening downtown in Memphis is very similar to what has happened here in Nashville. Not quite to that scale, but there are cranes everywhere. There are 4 hotels being built. Our building spills out into our version of Broadway, which is called Beale Street.
That's right.
And so there's just a great deal of energy downtown. And we've seen businesses that have been out in the suburbs of Memphis who are now relocating downtown. ServiceMaster in particular has relocated 2,000 employees into the core of downtown. And we've played a role in that a great city is one where there are great places to work and great places to play. And we bring both, actually, because we employ several hundred folks, and then we provide an entertainment value right downtown. One thing that's been great has been to be working with the Tennessee Economic and Community Development Organization to try and attract businesses to the Western Tennessee megasite. And so they've used our venue as a place to tell the story about Memphis. We take folks and create a hospitality experience for them that has made Memphis very attractive to companies who are moving in. And to speak to the regional footprint, our broadcast, Sean and I were just talking about our relationship with Fox, and our broadcast footprint is a 7-state footprint. So we're able to tell the story of Memphis and get exposure for our corporate partners around a 7-state region, which is also very impactful.
Yeah, and we don't hear that a lot in terms of that regional footprint, even for a small, what we would consider a smaller state in terms of population and a smaller town for Memphis to have the footprint of, if not more, than most of the larger states and most of the larger cities. I think that's amazing. If you don't mind, I would love to skip over to Sean for a second. I remember I was in Nashville for a board meeting at Fisk, and I just happened to be downtown, and it was the day of a Predators game, and the entire downtown was taken over by people in these Predators jerseys. And I don't think I ever seen anything like that. Sean, can you talk about the impact you think the Predators are having in the downtown area and in the city as a whole?
Well, sure, but more importantly, did we win the game?
I don't know, but I'm sure you guys did.
Well, we didn't. You can't come back. Our story is similar to the Grizzlies and Titans, and will be for the soccer team. Got here 20 years ago. The way expansion used to work in our leagues, changed that for the better, I think, is you're going to get the second or third worst player on every team. Then you try to build a roster, and what you do is you struggle, for a period of time. It's the way it was supposed to be. And eventually you carve out of that. And normally what you have is 5, 6, 7, 8 years in, you really struggle. And a lot of teams almost relocate, almost get driven somewhere else. That's what happened to us. So just 10 years ago, this team almost moved. And really an amazing thing happened. 4 guys and our families stepped up, day 1 season ticket holders, and they bought the team. They bought the team as a partnership with a brand new mayor, wasn't even sworn in yet, and Carl Dean. And they were going to ride off the vision that Mayor Bredesen, at the time Governor Bredesen, had when he built the building right before, he built our building and then lured the Titans to come here as well, built that building. And his vision was, we need civic furniture. We need to do things to bring people into different parts of the city to drive different behavior. 25 years ago, 23 years ago, I was part of a group that used to invest in stadiums, met with Mayor Bredesen. He told us what his vision was. We wished him well and got out of here as fast as we could, because we didn't see the vision. We really, really didn't see what he was seeing. He wanted to create an entertainment district on Broadway, and if you're enjoying Broadway right now and you didn't know what it looked like 20 years ago, to say it was different is such an understatement. It wasn't safe. If you were there after dark, you were there for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. Nothing positive was happening, but he knew if he invested in the city and struck the proper public-private partnerships, the right thing would happen. So we got here, the Titans got here right after. We truly bookend, that district, and you just look at the wave of activity that's happened and it's followed as success is driven forward. We draw about 2.2 million people a year through our concerts and our games, and it's just taking this big old storm that's built and built and built. And we were just polar opposites of the Titans. They came here, Super Bowl contenders, one of the best teams in the league, so they exploded as soon as they got here. For us, I came a little bit later. But what was nice about both, when we were down, they were really high. And, as things change, we both were able to create activity that wasn't there.
right.
And the more activity, the safer it becomes. The safer it becomes, investment follows. And once investment follows, you keep building on it and building on it and building on it. But we're the second smallest city in the entire NHL.
Wow.
Yet we're the second busiest venue in America because of the success of the team.
That's right.
You know, when the team does well, we're selling out every game, winning more playoff games than we had in the past. You have an opportunity to sell your concerts on the wave of those things. When the Titans are doing well, we interlock with them and have their players at our playoff games and have our players over at theirs, the fans kind of rally around that, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I always laugh when people think sports are important. I think they're really important for our kids and youth and what they're going to become. But I always say, all we do is, and I said it backstage, we cook hot dogs. That's about all we do. But as you said, we also unify cities, communities, and states. And when we all work together, it takes on a whole new level. So now when our streets are painted gold, tonight they'll be blue. I'm going to call your color gold, by the way, for both of you guys, because I do like the yellow hints. But when we work together and we have our players and you honor them at the game on Saturday, or we cross our broadcast together through the 7 states, fans get up for it.
That's right.
And now the Sea of Gold occurs. And our city, our teams are the focus of every league, every team, every event that's happening, because people want what we have. And I always laugh and say, well, it started with 2 mayors that had a vision to create something downtown for it to spill off of. And out of that became teams that our communities own. And when you look at, the depth in Memphis with the Grizzlies, the Titans, ourselves, and the SEC team, they're all owned by our fans. And I think that's why you have such passion, regardless of wins and losses. We're all smarter when we win a little bit more, but we really have something unique in the city. But again, it really started with Mayor Bredesen, Governor Bredesen, and Mayor Dean, who said, we can do more with these franchises and these buildings and investment, and let's pod them. Let's put the arena and the stadium surrounding this area we want to redevelop. Let's build a baseball stadium in Germantown where nothing was going on. Let's build a hockey rink out in Antioch where it had no positive investment for 10 years, and now you see this wave of dominoes falling. And now let's build a soccer stadium at the fairgrounds to continue this growth south. It's fun to be part of the vision of someone else, and all we have to do is sell some hot dogs.
That's an amazing story. The only other city in the nation that I think that can even come close to this story is probably Indianapolis, right? It was a racetrack in the middle of cornfields is what they called it. And now if you look at Indianapolis, because of sports teams, just completely redeveloped, brought new companies there, tourism, which brings me to my next question for Stuart. Stuart, it's a 2-part question about the macro impact of having a sports team in your city. But also I want to talk about the micro stories, something that's very personal to me, as not only as a fan of the Titans, but also as a friend to several players on the team. I want to give you a couple of stories, and then I want you to talk about your view, macro, and then any individual stories. And I know you mentioned Logan Ryan when we spoke on the phone. But there's a player for the Titans named Derek Morgan. And for those of you that don't know Derek Morgan, this guy does so much in the community that can't be measured from an economic standpoint. I'll give you 2 examples. The first example is Derek Morgan and I sent over 50 college students to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. All of these students were interested in building careers in technology and being founders of companies, but wanted to learn more about how to build companies, and they couldn't afford to get there. Derek Morgan stepped up and brought in partners, and we sent dozens of kids over there and hosted them when they were there. And those types of stories go overlooked a lot, but I want to make sure I call that out. And another story with Derek is not only is he supporting the kids going to these types of conferences, but he started an investment company called Huddle Ventures, where he's investing in them himself. And how do you measure the impact that one hero for the Titans can make on individual kids who want to go into certain careers? I just think it's immeasurable. So if you don't mind, can you talk about macro, what sports teams bring to their towns from commerce and tourism, and then even micro, some of the stories that are your favorites from some of your players?
Sure, thank you. When a professional sports franchise is placed in a city, there's usually a venue that is attached to that, and the venue is the home and is viewed through the lens of the sports team's participation in there, whether it's the Predators, at the arena, the Titans at Nissan Stadium. But the venues end up meaning so much more. While the team is the anchor tenant, the other 50 whatever weeks of the year and days that venue is open are what generate and really support the purpose of the structure. As Sean mentioned, the arena is packed. The schedule is just remarkable, the number of events flowing through, and that was the design that Mayor Bredesen had when he took the bold step back in the early 90s of building an arena before he had a tenant, before he had any true thought of how he was going to put somebody in it to anchor the building. He knew that it needed to be there in downtown on Broadway, and his vision was fulfilled. The Predators were able to come in and have managed the building and recruited acts and so forth, and that has become the economic driver he envisioned it to be on Broadway. Similar vision he had across the river. Our organization noticed the forward thinking from his administration that led to the creation of that arena, and so we approached him about potentially having a partnership with the then Oilers and build a stadium somewhere in Nashville. And he immediately zeroed in on the east bank of the Cumberland River. He knew that that was an area that was lagging behind other parts of the city, and it was such a fertile piece of property that he felt that there's something better could be done with it. And so dropping the stadium there, anchoring it with the arena downtown, has developed a venue campus that rivals almost any major city in America, and that was unheard of 20 years ago. As Sean mentioned, when I first moved here in 1995 to work on this project, downtown was not necessarily somewhere you hung out. It was not full of Chamber of Commerce type businesses that you would promote. But fast forward to today, it is. It's a model for almost any other city in America that's trying to take that step of returning to a past glory stage or emerging from a smaller town to a major area. And it's a public-private partnership, not only in our businesses, but also any type of business, whether it's corporate headquarters relocating, retail entertainment, businesses or so forth, that the city has been very aggressive in seeking partnerships and bringing people here. And what has resulted is the dynamic area that you walk to out front. And these venues not only create opportunities for locals and residents in this area, they also attract the types of large events that bring in people from other parts of the country. We are blessed to be able to host the NFL Draft next spring. That would not have happened without Mayor Bredesen's vision to bring this franchise to the city. It's the second largest event that the NFL hosts every year after the Super Bowl, and we are very proud and excited to have it happen in this city, and the city's going to do a bang-up job, as they do with everything, in hosting it, and going to send everybody away with a smile on their face and an understanding of what the city's capable of doing. And then next on the horizon after that, you've got the World Cup coming to North America, and Nashville. I would be stunned, quite honestly, if we aren't one of the cities that are going to host games. The venue has shown its capability of hosting world-class soccer, and the city has shown its ability to host world-class events, and so it's going to be, in my eyes, and I'm biased, an attractive and the best option for them. So that's the teams are great for the cities, but the teams come with the venues as well, that you can't look at an investment in a venue as just to attract a team. For a city, it's building a structure that is a 52-week-a-year economic driver for the cities. Following up on the other thing you had said, the teams are full of players, and the players are celebrities. Celebrities come with good and bad in some areas, but for sports teams, the majority of their players are engaged and active in the community and like to serve as role models and do a wonderful job doing so. And some people get confused and think, well, yeah, it's easy to be a celebrity and serve as a role model, whether you're a 7-foot-tall basketball player or a hard-skating defenseman or a quarterback. But that's not the role model that they are. I think representatives of all of our franchises would agree that the role model they serve as is one of empowerment to youth, to show that, no, you're not necessarily going to be an NBA player, an NHL player, or whatever, but you can be the best person that God has intended for you to be. And I'm here to help you understand that you are a valuable person, you have skills, and you will contribute. Let's find out what that is and help you, regardless of the circumstances you're coming from, achieve what you're intended to do with the skills you have been given to. And we have a bunch of wonderful players. The Predators do as well, and the Grizzlies, and I'm sure Nashville, the MLS team will as well. But our organizations push them out in the community, help connect them with especially at-risk youth, to help them. Because as a parent, and some of these kids come from homes without parents, but even those with parents, a parent can, as we all probably know, can say over and over and over, but our credibility only goes so far with our children. But when they have someone that they watch and admire come in and tell them that too, that said, yes, Tim, you can do this, or yes, Lori, you can do this, and what interests you, and pursue that, chase that dream, grab for those stars. And that kind of inspiration is what has the long-term effect that carries beyond the fields that we all play on.
I think it's important to note also that a lot of the players that do things in the community, you know, as you mentioned, the team gives them or has a platform for starting that or initiating that, but many of the guys do things on their own. And we end up, as the Grizzlies, we get a little credit for that when Mike Conley gives out 200 or 300 pairs of shoes at a park, but he's doing that on his own. And so that's, you know, as you mentioned, there are hundreds of stories like that, I think, and the region benefits from it.
Actually, if you don't mind, since you're talking, can you talk about the youth kind of sports initiatives that you guys are doing and inspiring your future fans and players? And I have a couple of questions for you, and I know you want to respond to that as well.
Sure. We have a program called Junior Grizzlies, and it involves camps and clinics, but leagues as well. And you know, the footprint now continues to expand as we try and regionalize the fandom of the Grizzlies. We actually have close to 1,900 kids who play in leagues this fall in Nashville, who will be wearing Junior Grizzlies jerseys, and that's sort of stretched into Mississippi and Arkansas. And so about 7,500 kids right now are part of the program. And, you know, those are our future fans.
Absolutely.
And some of those kids will end up going to school, coming back to Memphis, getting jobs.
Absolutely.
And being season ticket holders.
And they want to stay in Memphis because they're connected to the city. A lot of smaller towns lose some of their most talented students and professionals because they don't have those things that are connecting them to the town. So, Mary, did you want to respond to that?
Sure, actually a little bit earlier, that when we're talking about players going out in the community during their playing career, we are fortunate enough to have a legend, a person like Eddie George, who stepped up and agreed to be honorary co-chair with Lily Aldridge.
Wow.
And not only has Eddie come to some of the events, but he came to our city council meeting last Monday during an open public forum and had some prepared remarks and just did a fantastic job. But it speaks to a greater thing that's going on here in Nashville. And it's really the collaborative nature of the city.
Yes.
That from the beginning, the mayor told John Ingram, this is going to be a private-public partnership. And by that, I mean a really big P on private. And it turned out to be that way. But during last summer, we had the MLS commissioner and his team in town to kind of vet what was going on and had a great lunch. Sean was there, Steve Underwood, and just a chance to talk about how we work together and how we think this can benefit all of us. We know that we'll be competing for some things, but it carries through everything that we do, and it's just really one of those really cool things that just makes you smile about the city.
So we have a few more minutes before we open it up for question and answer, but I did want to pose the question to the panel in general. Can any of you talk about your perspective on hiring local? I know that's a big initiative that teams bring to their local communities, but can anyone elaborate on what that means and maybe even try to monetize or give us a number, like how many companies, what type of economic impact do you think hiring local has that you're keeping in your city as opposed to bringing California companies who are not in touch with this particular state and to kind of generate that revenue?
Well, everything we do from an economic impact, some things just happen by sheer transference. 75% of our tickets are sold in the state, 25% aren't. So you have that impact. But the real impact, and you all touched on it, is how we touch lives, and that really is with the job engagement. And we employ about 300 full-time people and about 800 part-time staff. And a lot of people dismiss those part-time positions, and I'm not really sure why, because it's not always the best first job or the best last job, but sometimes it's that first foot in the door for what you think your career could be. And we have an executive team of about 8 people, 9 people. Every one of us, except for one, our attorney, of course, started as a part-time employee in this industry.
Wow.
And to us, that's incredible. The guy that books our building, we applaud David Kells all the time. He does a better job than anyone I know in any position. Started on our loading dock in high school, worked through college for it. We have those examples throughout. So when we have a job fair, as we did past few nights getting ready for the new season, a lot of people only want to focus on, well, I want to be X job. And there's a good joke about millennials, and I love millennials. I hate when people bash them, except when someone says to millennials, so what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to be the CEO, and I'm even willing to wait 2 weeks for it. You have these wonderful opportunities when you're in college, when you're seeking maybe a new career, or you're getting out of the armed forces, of jumping in and showing people how good you could be. So of our full-time staff, probably 200 are right from Nashville, which is odd. You're all unicorns if you're from Nashville. The others choose to come here. I mean, the good and the bad about sports teams are too many people want to work in the industry. I mean, for every job that's open, you probably get 500, 600 resumes. We host seminars on how to break into sports. I teach a class at Belmont University. What I always tell people is take advantage of every opportunity that's in front of you. Jump on in, because you don't know where it's going to lead you. I started in the food and beverage industry as a busboy for a team that serviced the sports industry. So the jobs are there, but you probably won't be the EVP of X department when you're 22 years old. But you might have an opportunity to work in the events department, working 30 hours a week as you break into it. So our future is hiring locally. The real future for us is when we get to draft a kid from Nashville on the playing surface, but that might take a little bit longer, but it'll get there. But hiring local, to me, is everything. I think one of our future governors, I think they both touched on it, was it's great to create a job that you feel locally. It's nice to bring jobs as well, though.
That's amazing. I want to ask one more question. It's a little lighthearted, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. I think one of the most exciting aspects of having a sports team, which also contributes to tons of economic development and brand recognition throughout the world, is winning a championship. So when I think of Nashville, and I'm from Chicago, I think of the Music City Miracle. And I'm not even from here, but I know the story. What I want to know from you, Stuart, is from the perspective of the Titans, that Super Bowl run, what impact do you think winning a championship could have on a town like Nashville for all of the teams here? Because just imagine in a 2-year time frame if every team here won a championship. What does that look like for Nashville? And also talk about the Music City Miracle, too. I want to talk about that.
Winning is what drives each of us up here on the stage, and it is what deepens the hold you have on your fans. It's what brings additional fans into the fold and so forth. And that's what all our objectives are, and that's the byproduct that you see from a sports franchise in any city, that when the team wins the next morning, everybody's got a little more bounce on their step. When they go to work, everyone's in a little better mood as they gather around the water cooler to talk about, hey, did you watch the game last night? And it gives a bonding capability to it. Football is huge in the South, obviously. We're certainly not going to take credit for football being huge in the South. It just is naturally that way. But when we moved here in the mid-'90s, that was part of the appeal that some people had, is you rooted for your colleges on Saturdays, and then it gave the chance for everyone to come together and root for the same team on Sunday. So whether you were an Alabama fan, a Tennessee fan, a Vandy fan, or an LSU fan or anything, whatever your collegiate allegiances were on Sunday, you came together and were able to root for the team. So there's that camaraderie that builds around it. And so whenever we're successful, Sean saw it with the Stanley Cup run 2 years ago. All of a sudden, the swimming pool gets a little larger when you're there, and that's a great opportunity that you capitalize on when you have that moment where even more eyes are turned to your team than are normally.
Yes.
It's your chance to make a connection with those
That's
folks.
right.
And we saw the same thing the year that we went to the Super Bowl as well. It was early on in our time here, and we had a great, tremendous following all along. But all of a sudden, there were additional eyes that had turned
Right.
and connected with us. So it's an opportunity you have to touch and connect with and interact with some people that wouldn't normally be there. And so the Music City Miracle, you're right, is one of those iconic moments that you can't script, you can't develop. Otherwise, you'd plan one every year.
Right.
It was just one of those moments in time where where time freezes, I guess. The world freezes except for what's going in front of you. It's amazing how many people we talk to still now 20 years later that say, oh, I was in the stadium, I did this. Apparently there were 240,000 people in the stadium because I've heard stories from more people than we could fit in there. But it's created a special moment that people will carry for the rest of their lives, that is a common sharing moment to start a dialogue with someone. Where were you when that happened? What was your mindset? Were you in front of a TV? Were you in the car listening? Were you there with your dad or with your mom? And it's created something they'll carry forever, and those are precious, and you cherish
Amazing,
those.
amazing. Look, thank you. I know there are some people who traveled here from North Carolina. I saw some people from Indiana. I saw some people from Virginia. Yes, I went through everyone's profile in a very stalkerish way to know who was in the audience. I see some people I know in the front row. So I wanted to give you guys a chance to ask these major players in the sports scene nationally, and of course the dominant players here in the state of Tennessee, any questions. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question for them that we could answer?
Good morning, Rashaun and the panel. I'm actually from Washington, D.C. My name is George Anderson. I have a question that hopefully will help others in the audience. For some of us in business, we have a budget for social impact. Is there a strategic way or any way that businesses cannot just kind of work in a silo as we try to make social impact with our budget, but maybe reach out to local teams and partner in any way that we can, whether it's summer camps, whether it's some of the other things that you're doing, so that some of our budget can go towards partnering with teams like yours?
Great question.
I mean, for us, everything we do in the community is probably more important than what we do on the ice. We know what we do on the ice drives what we do in the community to a degree. But we engage with our employees. We have something called Project 8K. It's Hearts of Gold. Every employee has to donate 40 hours a year. It's community service. This past year was over 10,000 hours. Our players follow suit. Our foundation is one of the most active foundations with the number of organizations they touch. But when someone always says to me, hey, we want to work with you, I won't lie, my radar always goes up a little bit and say, so you have an idea for us to execute. And we'll listen. We like ideas, but we really like a true partnership. So when somebody says, we want to work with a team to jump on board your Project 365 to attack pediatric cancer, or work with PK Subban on his Blue Line buddies and connecting neighborhoods with the police department, then we get really excited because it means there might be some more financial resources and maybe a little bit more extension for us to really take what we're doing fairly well, or a passion of our player, of our employee, and multiply it, amplify it in the community, where we always hesitate, and we work with about 800 different organizations through our community foundation, is when someone just says, hey, I have an idea for you. And I always laugh, and we all get them all the time. We still try to do them, but we really want to engage along the lines that you were saying. You have X budget, and you want to touch the lives of children, or those suffering through X, or change education processes. The answer is always yes from us, and I probably speak from all of us. We like to work with organizations that want to get behind what we're doing, leverage the passion of our fans to do something even bigger and better. So I always say, come with a complete idea and the desire to help activate it.
Any more questions in the audience? There we go.
Yeah, one over here. Hi, Corey Johns with the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. So I want to say thanks to each of you for being here. So first, comment for John, sort of toward John, and then a question for the group. So in our work, as we've expanded our focus under the Entertainment Commission into digital media, thanks to a lot of the great help of some of our ECD team here, one thing I've had the privilege to do is work with Lang Whitaker and get to know about Grizz Gaming, which is Tennessee's first professional esports team that launched this year. And so, you know, those are jobs. These are guys that got drafted just like the players and, you know, brought to Tennessee from places across the country. And that's, you know, they're projecting that's going to be a $1 billion industry by 2020. So it's grown about fourfold in the last couple of years. So I was just curious to hear, like, you know, from the rest of the team, like what you all are looking to do in terms of as franchises, or like what's on your radar screen in terms of like the esports world, and if you have any specific focuses on that, or just other thoughts that are kind of going on in the ecosystem around all that. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.
Sure. I'm not sure. Was that question for me or for the rest of them?
So I know what you guys are doing. I'm curious about, well, you know, one, your thoughts, you know, as you look at next season, and then also for the rest of the folks, you know, in the other sports, like what, if anything, they're thinking about doing from the franchise perspective in the esports world.
Right. Very quickly, we were one of 17 teams who raised their hand in the NBA to be a part of the initial year of NBA 2K. And so, as you mentioned, we drafted 6 guys who are part of our staff. They have a practice facility. These guys practice. A practice facility that we built, and we're streaming live content of those guys practicing and living, because it's very rich content. And we found a couple of partners who have helped us in the initial year. America's Navy being one of them, and then the tie there is that these guys are very good with games, and there is a lot of technical expertise that the Navy's looking to, grow within how we defend our country. And it was pretty successful. It was, we have some fans. It's funny, those guys, when they walk down Beale Street in Memphis, people come up to them and know who they are. I mean, it's amazing. And we can have an NBA player who, if you didn't know that he was, if he wasn't 6'10", you may not know exactly that he was a player. But those guys have created their own sort of fandom.
So I'll comment briefly from the MLS standpoint that even though we haven't taken the pitch yet, this year MLS launched their esport kind of league. I think 14 out of the 23 teams signed up to participate, and actually the Houston Dynamo team won it. It is on our radar, but right now our immediate focus is actually getting our stadium plan in place and getting through the council next Tuesday.
Madden, of course, is one of the most popular esport activities out there, and we're still not wrestling with, but still learning how to activate in that area. We've hosted on a team level some Madden tournaments in the stadium and so forth, and the NFL as a whole is obviously active in the licensing of the games, but is still developing a plan for how we can best activate in that area. Quite honestly, the NBA is way ahead of where the NFL is on that, but you're absolutely right. It is a brave new world coming down the pike at us fast.
And for us, we partner with EA Sports. We're fortunate PK Subban's on the cover this year. We just had our World Championship right before our award ceremony in Vegas, and our Nashville Predator player we drafted finished in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, didn't win, but we're kind of in the infancy. I always caution people, though, on esports. We like the sports component of it. I love the Fortnite side of it. I just don't know if that's a business we're getting into, but it's somewhat of a misnomer that's there. But again, we're jumping off in similar fashion, really following the NBA, though. They're forerunners of where they're going, what they're doing.
Thank you very much. We have 1 to 2 minutes left, and I know you have a question. Please ask, and if you guys can keep your answers brief to spare everyone running over time.
Sure, thank you. I'm curious if you all would talk about the role that technology plays in your businesses, from new algorithms that help you better identify your customers, new group sales, promotions perhaps, or the technology that's actually in the stadiums, like beacon technology that's helping you understand how people move around the facilities. Can you talk about what impact that has on your business and what we out here could do to increase our chances of doing business with you?
Let's go fast on that one.
Yeah, that's a heavy question. We're transitioning to digital ticketing this year. In the digital ticketing world, while it's hard for older people like me that have enjoyed that paper ticket since they were a kid, it does give the club the opportunity to know where that ticket is going and who's using that ticket.
What provider? I'm curious. What provider?
Through Ticketmaster.
You're going to go to Ticketmaster.
Right.
Okay.
And then once they're in the stadium, we are not there yet, but the natural growth would be to install beacon technology throughout the stadium so you can manage that customer's experience and learn from how they spend their time in your stadium.
Very similar. We have a data analytics department of about 8 people on the business side, about 4 on the sports side, but they are feeding and doing more today than I ever thought imaginable. When I started, I had a yellow pad of paper and I shared a desk, and now you fast forward and we've been 100% digital for a while, but it allows you to really engage with who your client is and who they're not. And you modify some behaviors. We have a philosophy, driveway to driveway. You know, when you're thinking about leaving for the game to the time you return, we want to know who you are, what you're doing, what you're not doing, how can we serve you better. But as soon as you invest in technology, you have to just keep going. You know, the first thing we all did was throw Wi-Fi in and quickly realize, oh my gosh, funnel's got to be bigger, and you just got to keep feeding it because people want to eat more data, information, entertainment. They'll share as much with you as you make easy for them to share. But it's one of those things that I can't believe how many people we have dedicated to in such a short window of time. But it's fun because for an old guy also, it's fun to have things change every day in front of you.
Speak for yourself on the old guy.
Well, look, unfortunately, we are out of time. We will be taking this on the road. We'll be touring Memphis, LA, Chicago, and New York next week. I'm kidding. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and thank you to these wonderful panelists for spending time out of their day. Again, Mary is the busiest person in all of Tennessee, so we thank you all for coming. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.